Hi everybody, just by a raise of hand who's seen a bear, or know a friend that's seen a bear in the city of Gulf Breeze. Okay, so lots of you have had experiences with bears directly, that's good. So I'm Jordan Green, I'm the West Panhandle area bear biologist. I cover from Escambia County to Walton County and up into Holmes County, and I'm here to talk about Florida black bear. Florida black bear is native to Florida. We suspect before Columbus came to the New World, there was about 11,000 black bears. Nobody was around counting them back then, obviously, so it is a guess. From the 1950s to 1970s, we saw those numbers drop to about 500 to 300 in the 70s. And so they were listed as threatened, and partially some of the hunting was closed in the state. And that was in 1974. In 1994, the northern part of the state closed what remaining hunting was allowed. And then in 2010, the FWC Commission came up with a rule that said, if you have a listed species, you have to have a plan for recovery. So basically, they spent 2 years putting that plan together, and when it was finalized in 2012, they determined they had enough information to say, okay, we can remove these from the state listed species. They were never federally listed. In 2015, we had a regulated limited bear hunt. So this is a map that shows the abundance of where bears are in the state of Florida. The darker regions are the areas that are the core population centers. So we live over here in the West Panhandle, and we have about 120 bears. This data is fairly new. It came out in 2016. It's a huge statewide effort to estimate the population. The big takeaway from this map, if you look at the coloring of it, there's really nowhere in the state of Florida where it's impossible to encounter a bear. We've had bears in downtown Orlando and Disney World. We've had them in Destin. You probably remember recently we had one in Pensacola. They've even been in Miami. So we went from 11,000 black bears down to about 300, and now we're back to over 4,000 statewide. So it's a success story for the bears. A lot of times people will say, oh, I saw mama and daddy and baby. Most of the time, they don't hang out in a family unit like that. During the mating season, you might see a larger bear with a smaller bear. It's usually a male with a female. Males are quite larger than females. They average 250 to 450 pounds, where females are only 125 to 250 pounds. State record was 760 pounds, which is huge. There's grizzly bears that don't get that big. And those are garbage-fed bears. And I'll get into that in a second. But males are more risk-taking. They have much bigger ranges. They'll wander through a community. You might see them 1 week, and then they'll come back another week. Looking for food, looking for mates. Females won't wander as far just because a lot of times they have young and they're not going to tote young pretty far with them. They have a unique evolutionary breeding adaptation. They breed in June to July is the busy months when they might be out in broad daylight. You'll see them looking for mates. The females will get what's called delayed implantation. The embryo basically won't implant into the uterine wall until she goes to den in the wintertime. And a lot of what determines how many embryos make it is how much food she's getting. It's completely conditional on the environment that she's in. So the better the food conditions, the better just the environmental conditions for her, the more young she's going to have. And they'll typically have 1 to 5 in a litter. I've seen a record of 6 somewhere, and I think that might have been grizzly bears, but I know we've gotten photographic evidence of 4 in the state of Florida. They come out the size of a Coke can, about 12 ounces, and they gain weight pretty quickly. By April, they're 5 pounds, they're mobile, their eyes are open, and they'll stay with their mom for 1.5 years. Their diet, they're omnivores just like you and I, but they're predominantly herbivores. 80% of their diet is made up of young fleshy plants like young grasses and saw palmettos and then berries and acorns and other things like that. And then a smaller portion of that is insect protein. So everybody knows Winnie the Pooh loves honey, bears love honey. When they're going into an apiary to raid beehives, honey is like an added bonus. Usually they're going in for the bee larva. There's a lot of protein in those little baby bees. And then on down the line, the smaller percent is actually meat. The meat that they do get is opportunistically caught. They're not chasing down their prey like a panther would. It's here. I don't have to work too hard to get it. So I got a picture of a possum on there because possums like to play dead, which is important. It'll come in handy later when I talk about how to respond to a bear. So bears are what we call crepuscular. It's a big fancy science word that means they're most active at dawn and at dusk. Deer are like this. I think panthers are like this. While they're most active during those times, when humans enter the equation and we have our garbage buffet lines out all night, they can actually shift that behavior to a more nocturnal behavior. Basically, there's nobody around to harass them at nighttime. No dogs out barking usually. People aren't on the street. Cars aren't going around as much. So they can actually adapt. There's a couple of things that Hollywood's kind of done for bears that hasn't done them any good, any service. One is just how bears interact with each other. A lot of what you see in the media are bears are these terrifying creatures. In reality, they really avoid fighting and conflict, even with each other, as much as they can. And this video, the bottom left-hand corner is mom. The two bears closest to the garbage cans are our cubs. And the two bears in the upper left-hand corner-ish are two male siblings that aren't associated with this family group. And they're coming in to check out that food, and you'll see what mom does. So you notice mom on the bottom corner, she's kind of popping her jaws and making a little sound. And then you saw the two males like, okay, I've had enough, I'm out of here. That's all it is. You don't see that on National Geographic. You don't see that in the movies. It's not that exciting. And so that's why it doesn't make it to that kind of level of our media. But that's really how bears interact with each other. And really they see us as big hairless bears. Bears are really timid by nature. They kind of evolved in these forest environments. So if they wanted to get away from danger, the quickest and easiest way to do that is climb a tree. When they're up there, they're safe. They're not hurting anybody. It's really hard to get to them. By raising a hand, can anybody see why that bear's up that tree in that picture? So that's a house cat. To show you how timid bears are, that cat actually treed that bear twice. The bear came down one tree and then went up another tree. So when I get into talking about how do you respond about a bear, just remember, channel your inner cat. It's all about attitude. Another thing that Hollywood's done a disservice of bears, grizzlies and black bears, is that this idea that when they stand on their hind legs, that's a sign of aggression. In reality, a bear that's trying to come at you pretty quickly on its hind legs is going to walk more like a penguin, and it's going to look more comical than threatening. The idea is that they have a really keen sense of smell. Their eyesight's about like ours, probably like mine, nearsighted. I can't see anybody without my glasses from far away, but they're standing upright to get a better whiff of the wind, to get a better view of their world. Imagine yourself down on all fours all the time. You're not really getting the best picture that you can, and so that's what they're really doing. It's to check you out. What are you? It's not a sign of aggression. And so this next video, before I start it, basically bears' sense of smell you can equate to our sense of vision. They use their sense of smell so adeptly that they could, let's say you're focusing on any object in this room, you can tune out every other distraction that you're sensing right now, the flicker of the lights, the sound of the air conditioning, and you can really focus on this one object. Bears can do that with their sense of smell. So when they smell a half-eaten piece of pizza that's in your garbage can, They know how much pepperoni's on it. They know how much garlic's on it. They know if it's their favorite onions or whatever that bear prefers, and they can do that from a mile away. So this video shows kind of the idea of bears locked into that sense of smell more so than his eyesight or his hearing or anything else. And this is a hunter in a tree stand in Minnesota, and our bears get just as big. If I was this hunter, I would have been making noise long ago to scare this bear away. But this bear is honed in on something that he likes, something he smells.
Hey, what are you doing there?
Right,
what are you doing there?
Right there, when the hunter says something, the bear kind of wakes up, turns on the other senses, and is like, oh wait, I'm not supposed to be here. And that's a big. You can see how big that bear is running away. Like, not an antagonist that sometimes they're made out to be. So bears will give us a defensive warning, just like a rattlesnake. A rattlesnake's not going to rattle when it's trying to catch its mouse. This is a good sign. Basically, it's them saying, hey, this is my personal space. I feel uncomfortable. Please back away. I'm asking you nicely. It's something we can de-escalate, and this is what it looks like. So basically what she's doing is a bluff charge. You don't know it's a bluff until she stops. She's kind of looking side to side. She's not making direct eye contact. Her ears are pinned back. She might swat at the ground. She's chomping her teeth, hitting those rear molars, huffing, elongating her snout, blowing air through her nose. Those are all good signs. So what do you do if you see a bear that does that? So the idea is, if you see a bear in the woods, you want to give it its space. You don't want to approach the bear. You want to back away slowly. If you're at your house, you want to try and scare that bear away. By making loud noises and really just trying to show your dominance. But the thing is that if a bear starts to approach you, regardless if it's a defensive encounter or a predatory encounter, which are very rare, your response is the same. You're going to hold your ground. You're going to look big. You're going to be like, hey, bear, get out of here. Or, I love 7-Eleven. They don't speak English. It's fine. Whatever you want to say. You do not want to run. You don't want to turn your back. You don't want to play dead. Only 15 people have been injured in the state of Florida since we've been recording in the 60s or 70s, I think. So it's not very common, and there's been no fatalities yet. How to scare, so I talked about scaring a bear. How do you scare a bear? Air horns work really well. Water scarecrow. There's a motion activated water sprinkler. Bear spray. Paintball guns are legal. Slingshots and firecrackers. Just don't tell law enforcement. Bear spray is very effective. It's more effective than a firearm, actually.
What about wasp spray?
You don't want to injure the bear. The idea is not to cause serious damage. You just want to incapacitate them or get them to be scared away if you can. And that's what bear spray can do. It's a temporary pain that will go away eventually. Wasp spray, I'm not really sure what that's going to do to the internal biology of a bear. You probably wouldn't want to spray a person in the face with it. So I wouldn't recommend it with a bear.
That's what I have instead of a gun in my house.
All right.
It's the bear alert.
The bears found out about us. I mean, if you have nothing else and you feel like your life is in danger, then yes, by all means. But if you're using it as the bear comes by my house every day and this is what I'm planning to do, then probably you have time to think of something else. But if it's whatever you've got on hand, if a bear's making contact with you, you're going to fight back. You want to go for the eyes and the nose. That's the most sensitive area on a bear, not so much on the shoulders. I was pretty padded there, but yeah, anything at hand that'll give you the upper hand. And the thing about wasp spray that comes to mind, the same thing with bear spray, is that a lot of it's just the sound of it coming out. Like bear spray, you can't apply it to your tent ahead of time before you go to bed at night. That actually will act as an attractant to bring the bear in. It only works when you use it immediately. It basically puts out a 30-foot wall of this pepper spray between you and the bear. It comes out about 70 miles an hour. You do want to be aware of wind direction unless you're in a hurricane. You probably shouldn't have to worry about it then. But we have to restart here.
Well, where's they gonna hibernate around here? In the winter?
That's a good question. So there has been studies that have proven, that guns aren't as effective as bear spray. Now that those studies weren't like, okay, you hold the gun and we're going to send the bear out and you hold the bear spray. This was looking back at data, and from the data that's on there, it works on every bear, even polar bears. So very effective. So let's talk about humans and bears. So we have a lot of people in the state of Florida, 20 million plus residents, I think 1,000 new people a day, a lot of visitors every year. Basically, more bears are out there. You saw how their population is increasing. The human population is increasing, so we're seeing more and more interactions between the two of us. So there's a couple terms I want to go over. One is habituation. Bears that are habituated to people, they're just used to people. It's not necessarily a danger to the bear or people when that happens. But then when a bear becomes food conditioned, they understand, remember how powerful their sense of smell is. They're eating the food that we've discarded or left out intentionally sometimes, and they smell us on it, and they associate, oh, people equals food. This is good, just like you would, reward a dog. And so when the two things combine, they're food conditioned and they're used to people, that's when we have to worry. They start to have this strong association with people and food reward. They start to lose their fear of people. They might not be afraid to approach us. So number one, garbage. Garbage is our number one issue as far as bringing bears in, getting them close to us. Bears losing their natural sense of fear of people. Remember how timid a wild bear should be. Pet food that's left out, even pet food, just the bowl that's left out. You may let your pet eat all the food. There could be residual in the oils in the pan, in the bowl, and that's enough to bring a bear in. Remember how powerful their sense of smell is. Grills. I tell people all the time, you really need to secure your grill, and if you don't, well, you'll find out the hard way. The bear will destroy your grill. So keeping them secured, keeping them clean. If there's any oil traps, pulling those. And bird feeders. Bird feeders are a big one. A lot of times people will say, oh, there's not really a lot of meal that a bear can get out of that. Actually, there's a lot. We call bird feeders bear feeders because it's basically if I came to you and said, would you like this bowl of blueberries that I just got out of my refrigerator? Or you can have this, or you can go pick your own over a 5-acre patch and find your own. So it's a lot easier, and you get a lot more calories, a lot more bang for your buck. Bears aren't dumb. They're gonna follow the path of least resistance. Bear calls have gone up since 2000. A lot of that, could be attributed to the advent of the internet. More people being aware of bears through presentations like this. People know who to call or that kind of thing. But again, it is just a sheer fact of the number of people and the number of bears. Why are people calling us? Number one reason, 38% is just a general interaction. I saw a bear in my yard. I saw a bear going down the street. I saw a bear in a tree. And then under that is a bear in garbage, 31%. Now we can't suss out just how much of the garbage part of the pie might belong in the general interaction, because you saw that bear going down the street. Well, where was he coming from? Was he just getting into your neighbor's garbage, or was he going to your neighbor's garbage? You saw a bear in the tree. Was he hanging out waiting for everybody to go to sleep to get into your garbage at night? So I imagine there's a little bit of this part of the pie that bleeds over into the general interaction that we can't really suss out just from phone calls. And this is just kind of thrown in there just to give you an idea that statewide roadkill bears, it happens a lot, unfortunately. You're wearing all black and out in the dark crossing streets. A lot of times it's especially around holiday weekends, a lot more people traveling on the roads. I just want to stress, really be looking out for wildlife, not just for the wildlife's sake, but for your own sake. Hitting a bear is not a pleasant thing. So how do we deal with garbage? We know we've identified the problem. How do we fix it? So commercial garbage is pretty easy. Most commercial garbages will come with plastic lids. Bear will rip right through that. We'll sit on it, cave it in. Or if there's plastic sliding doors, he'll just open those up just like we would. So the idea is that you switch out your plastic lids with either fully metal lids, plastic lids that are steel reinforced, or you can modify your lid with either an old bed rail or a 2x4 underneath the lid so that when a bear stands on it, they don't just cave it in. The other thing is a security locking bar that flips up over the lid. Those can be rented from your waste hauler usually. And then sliding doors need to be switched out with metal doors, and they need to be able to be latched. The idea is bears don't have opposable thumbs. So something like a carabiner clip or a dog leash clip, something like that would work. So those are pretty easy. Residential garbage, also an easy solution. For those who have buildings or garages on their property, the cheapest and easiest thing to do is put it in your garage until the morning of pickup. I'll tell people all the time when I'm going out and we have a bear issue in a neighborhood, I'll go canvass and knock on doors and say, hey, you really want to get your garbage secure to prevent bears from coming in the neighborhood. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that means you might have to get up 1 or 2 days a week early just to get your garbage out. But in the end, you're protecting yourself and you're protecting your community. Retrofit cans, basically it's 2 gate hasps that you can buy for like a wooden gate, and you install them on either side of the can, and then you clip it with either a dog clip or a carabiner clip, and I have instructions with me today on how to do that. It's also on our website. Those are fairly effective. It's better than nothing. The idea is that once those are clipped, you also kind of want to secure the can so the bear doesn't drag it off into the woods and perform CPR on it, because he will be able to feed it then. Another thing you can do is build a caddy. It's basically like building a small building just for the garbage can. It's sturdy enough to keep a bear out. And lastly, you can purchase a bear-resistant can or request from your waste hauler. I brought one with me today. It has a steel reinforced lid and a locking mechanism that requires, an opposable thumb or some kind of ingenious way to unlock it. There's a couple different brands out there, a couple different companies. With the retrofit kits, securing garbage into your building until the morning of pickup, or some of the commercial garbage cans, you have to unlatch them the morning of pickup usually. The waste hauler, depending on where you live, the truck driver's not going to get out of the truck to unlatch it for you. So you don't want to just see your garbage be shaken and just set back down on the ground. However, there are a handful of new companies out there who have designed a can that is commercially bear resistant, that works with a fully automated trash collection system. So the forks come out and somehow there's a mechanism in there and the garbage can knows, okay, I'm being lifted upside down and the lid will open. I would recommend those because they're, no muss, no fuss. You can leave them outside all the time. Bears can't get into them, and the lids will close, kind of automatically with the weight of you dropping it. So when I say a bear-resistant can, the designs are actually tested in West Yellowstone Bear and Wolf Research Institute. If you've never been there, I highly recommend it. They have 3 expert grizzly bears, and that's a picture of a grizzly trying to get into this style can. Basically, they get 45 minutes with a can or Yeti coolers, any kind of product they're trying to certify as bear resistant. They put peanut butter in there and fish and small children and give the bear like 45 minutes to try and get into the can. And if it can't get into it, then they consider that certified. I was joking about small children. Gardens aren't so much a problem, but livestock and bee yards, definitely people who keep bees. If you live in bear country, you know you need to have an electric fence. Backyard chickens, the same way. If you are, you know, participating in that kind of backyard agriculture and you don't put an electric fence up, you are actually potentially drawing a bear in. So you really, really want to use an electric fence. These are grizzly bears. Forget where this is. This is in Alaska at a dump. I'll just show you. This is a really stout electric fence. We don't recommend it making it that big, but there's three grizzlies here. And so you saw the first one, got a taste of the electric fence and didn't like it. But the other two were like, I don't know, boom. So basically what happens is the electric current goes through their wet nose, straight down through their front paws, because the way electricity works, it goes through the ground. And that is a really effective deterrent to keep bears away. So that electric pulse just let the muscles give out, and then the bear was like, okay, I don't want that. Bears are persistent, so let's say you forget to turn on the electric fence one day, the bear's going to come back and check. They'll know if it's on without touching it. But this was a resident that had a bird feeder on a pole, and he didn't give the bear enough time to understand that the bird feeder was no longer there for him to have. So his idea of he took it off a pole and strung it up in a tree right like this, and using the idea of when you go camping, you want to put your food 10 to 12 feet up in the air, 4 to 6 feet out from the nearest branch. So the bear figured it was a game he was playing. So you can see in the picture the pole down in the bottom there where the bird feeder used to hang. So very determined, very persistent. What's our FWC policy? So you call us and you've got a bear issue. What can you expect? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at anything, identify any issues that might be drawing that bear. And remember, bears are really just following their stomach. If you've got a bear in your area, it's because they're eating something in your area. So we're going to provide technical assistance over the phone to help you try and figure that out. We're really going to emphasize personal responsibility. There's only one of me for 5 counties. There's only so many law enforcement out there that can respond. And so really your best defense is a good, keeping those attractants secure. I relate it to basically being out in the ocean, and the keeping your attractant secured is like wearing your life jacket. If you want to be as safe as you can be, your life jacket is keeping those attractants secured, and keeping them secured year round, because another bear will come. Bears are in the area. Some bears don't den during the winter. They'll stay awake. Why don't we trap and relocate? Part of the problem is you wouldn't want me to move a problem bear into your backyard. Most of the time, over 50% of the time, they're going to repeat the same offense that they got trapped for in the first place. Well over half will try to wander and return to the area. Remember how powerful the sense of smell is. You got to take them really far away for them to be like, okay, this is a new place, I'm just going to settle here. And while they're wandering, a lot of them get hit by cars because they're crossing a lot of highways to get back home. And the other thing is there's really no remote or empty areas left to take a bear. A lot of people say, oh, Eglin is excellent bear habitat. That's where all the bears come from, and they're coming down and coming into our garbage at night from Eglin. Actually, Eglin is pretty devoid of bears. It's very high and dry and open. Bears don't like that. They like the areas on the outskirts of the Eglin property, where it's dense forest habitat. I like to call them forest ninjas. They like to be able to get in there and just go 10 feet into the dense woods and disappear. They like that security of being in a place where they're not seen as easily. And so unfortunately for us, most of our houses are in those areas, and so the bears that we encounter are being raised in our neighborhoods. And the other thing is, if we do take a bear to somewhere else, there's already bears there, so that they will defend their territory, basically their range, and they'll say, if you put a smaller bear into a bigger area, that smaller bear is going to get chased out and have to run around until it can establish his own place. If you see a bear in the neighborhood, if it's in a tree, it's scared or it's feeding, you just want to clear the area, give the bear its space, allow the bear to find its own way out. It found its way in, it'll find its way out. There's not a whole lot of bear skeletons sitting up in trees in neighborhoods. And most likely it'll come down at dark when people have gone to bed and left their garbage out. You don't want to chase and corner it. There is a fine line between hazing and harassing. I'll get into that in a little bit. But it is a state law. You can't feed a bear intentionally or unintentionally, according to the statute, Florida Administrative Code. There's two parts to this code. Part A is, obviously, if law enforcement catches you feeding a donut to Boo Boo, you're going to get in trouble. But the second part of it is what a lot of people aren't aware of, is that if you're putting your garbage out in an area where bears are likely to get into it, whether they've got into it or not before, living in bear country is enough to be cited for it. And our officers will do that. Because the idea is, whether you're holding a donut in your hand or you left your donut in your garbage can, to the bear there's no difference, because the bear can smell that on you regardless. And they start to identify, oh, humans are going to feed me, which is not what we want them to feel. So once you've secured your attractants, it will take a bear a little time to learn that it's secured, usually 2, maybe 3 weeks for them to stop coming around. They'll be periodically checking, so you got to be vigilant with it. And on top of that, you want to scare that bear. Our motto is stash that trash and scare that bear. If you can't remember anything else after this talk, if you remember those 2 things, you'll be going a long way in keeping yourself and your community safe from bears. And you only need to slip up once, and they're right back in there. So this is what I was kind of talking to you about as far as hazing a bear, defending your property, really making that loud noise and trying to scare them off.
You shan't know the bear's here. Let me go in your office, because he might come after me.
Get down! Right now! Go! No! No! Down!
So
Scared him.
you see how assertive she was in getting that bear to go away, and now the bear went to check out the front door. But I'm just kidding. The idea is that you saw her, you saw the cat. That woman was probably 90 pounds soaking wet. Anybody can do this. It's not something that you feel that you need to wait for somebody else to do. But I will say, don't ever do anything you don't feel comfortable doing, obviously, and you want to haze a bear from a safe place. You saw how close she was to the door. If that bear decided to come towards her, she could back away and get back inside to safety. The other thing is persistence. Bears aren't going to just run away like a jackrabbit just because you show your face. Remember, they're used to people. They're used to smell of people. We get calls all the time. Well, I hazed the bear and it just stood there and looked at me. well, how long did you stand there and haze the bear? You really got to make that bear uncomfortable, especially this time of year. We've got a lot of acorns dropping out of the trees. They get kind of just tunnel vision on the acorn sometimes. They'll walk right up in the yard and they ignore bombs going off, and they're just so focused on those acorns. But I've seen instances where people really haze bears that are really into whatever they're doing, and it gets to the point where they just get annoyed and they're like, okay, fine, I'm out of here, and they leave. It's really about, you know, expressing that human dominance, but being persistent about it, not just being like, oh, well, get out of here, bear, and then, well, he didn't leave, so I'm going to go. So it's a community effort, and this is a short little video of basically what we as an agency, FWC, recommends communities to do to protect themselves.
Did you know that your chances of encountering a Florida black bear are greater today than at any time in the past 100 years? It's true. So it's never been more important for you to know how to share Florida's changing landscape with this amazing animal. Ideally, black bears live in forests far from human development, where they forage for natural foods like acorns and insects. Unfortunately, as human populations expand, bear habitat is lost. As bears' natural feeding patterns are interrupted, bears begin to adapt to these new environments, which can lead to human-bear conflicts. One of the best ways to reduce human-bear conflicts is by creating bear-wise communities. Residents of a bear-wise community know how to coexist with bears, when and how to report bear activity, and keep anything that might attract a bear secure. Luckily, there are already bear-wise communities we can model our plans after. Over 40,000 residents who live in the western third of Seminole County, Florida, are required to keep their attractants secure from bears. Several homeowners associations in this area are going one step further to educate their residents about bears and when people should contact the FWC for additional assistance. There's no better example of a proactive approach in reducing bear issues than on Hurlburt Field Air Force Base in Okaloosa County. In 2012, base officials required the use of bear-resistant garbage cans for all base buildings and implemented an education program on the do's and don'ts when living near bears. They were able to document more than a 70% decline in calls and complaints about bears. In many Florida counties, waste service companies are providing bear-resistant trash cans for a small monthly fee. Some cities are modifying dumpsters and allowing residents to modify their residential trash cans to make them more bear-resistant. Throughout Florida, education programs are being implemented in schools as well as civic groups, teaching the do's and don'ts of living in bear country. The key to reducing human-bear conflicts is to work together with the FWC, residents, local government officials, and waste service companies. Everyone has a role in reducing human-bear conflicts, and two important ways to accomplish this are to make bear-resistant trash cans more available and use the FWC's many educational materials to learn and spread the word about how to be bear-wise. To learn more about living and recreating in Florida bear country, go to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission's Black Bear website at myfwc.com/bear.
Have to
Conservation
abide by either,
Commission's Black
some kind of enforceable bylaw or some kind of enforceable ordinance that we can deem that community then bear-wise. And there's actually grant funding available for communities that have met those requirements. We've had that grant funding available for the previous 3 years. We never know if we're going to get it the next fiscal year or not. This previous fiscal year's grant funding has already passed. The deadline was August 1st, and I think they've already announced the awardees. But it could happen again next year. And it's not to say that if a community adopts Bear-wise rules, that future grant money, whether or not we get it next year or the next year, they can't be backfilled and reimbursed for some of their costs. So we have a stakeholder group that basically helped put together a quick visual sign. It's we call it the green, yellow, red sign, or the green, amber, red, on how bears might be behaving around you and how to react to that behavior. So the green level, the normal behavior, is a bear that's just doing its normal bear activities in a natural setting. It's far away from people, it's easily scared away, it's in a tree, it's leaving tracks behind, scat, tracks. I've got some examples of that with me today, where it's feeding on natural foods. You're consider yourself lucky, don't approach the bear, enjoy your day. Concerning behavior, the yellow is basically if the bear is not being scared away by loud noises, you've done everything you can to be persistent in scaring that bear away, and he's just totally ignoring you. They're eating food that is not natural, so garbage, pet food, birdseed, your grill, or they're protecting food or cubs and they charge or block food or cubs from people. Basically, anytime you're seeing what you might perceive as aggressive behavior, definitely you want to give us a call. And unfortunately, right now, due to the hurricane, our regional office in Bay County as far as I know, that when they first got back to it, they couldn't get to it. It was just all the trees are down in the parking lot, so they're working on cleaning that up. The building, I think, is still secure, but so there's no power over there is the big thing. So when I normally say call our regional office, I'm now saying call our wildlife alert hotline number if you're having an issue if we're over here. And I'll provide that number at the end. It's also on our brochures. So red threatening behaviors, like you need to call somebody as soon as possible. A bear's approaching people or pets, that's a really bad sign. If a bear's lingering around human used areas, so you go out of your office building and there's one just staring at you in the parking lot. If it's entered a tent or a building or a vehicle that's used normally by people, if it's physically made contact with people, it's definitely a no-no. If it's eating food, garbage, pet food, birdseed, when people are present. So it just doesn't even care, it's eating it right in front of you. And it's like, hey, how are you doing today? You definitely want to give us a call. So the numbers to report that to, at some point when the Panama City office opens, it's this 850 number, but for any kind of wildlife issue, you can call either one of these numbers. But for right now, we're recommending calling the wildlife alert number. It's at 888-404-3922. And then there's only so much I can present today in this kind of setting. There's only so much information I can get out. I could probably be up here for 8 hours and tell you more and more about bears. But really, there's a lot of information on our website. Most everything that you could possibly need to know is there. It's myfwc.com/bear. Instructions on how to secure garbage, on ways to scare bears, how to install a retrofit kit, what a retrofit kit is, how to modify dumpsters. I brought some of that information with me today. The green, amber, red sign, if you forget what it was, that's your go-to stop for all the information about bears that we can provide. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.